And remember, Chesterton is always better with friends. No, it's not the end. It is only the beginning of this episode of Uncommon Sense. Tune in to find out what Chesterton has to say about friendship coming up next. A very good day and warm greetings to all of you out there. Thank you for tuning in to Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. I am Albert Saenz with you again, and also joined with my wonderful co-host, Grettelyn Darkey. Grettelyn, hello.
Hi there, Albert.
Hello, friend.
Hello, friend.
How are you?
I am feeling friendly today.
Yeah, it's a good day for friendship.
It's a good day for friendship. We just had this thought, we sort of changed the tagline, veered the direction of the podcast a little bit. I think it's always kind of in this vein anyway, but we're just making it explicit. But, might be nice to talk about what Chesterton had to say about friendship.
Yeah, and a good guide for this episode, at our website, with all the good content we have of Chesterton, we happen to have a section that Chesterton has, or that we've provided, with Chesterton quotations on friendship. And if anyone wants to follow along, you can find that at chesterton.org/quotations/friendship. So it's not too hard, and we'll make sure and put that link in the description. Yeah, so you want to kick it off? Let's just take it down. There's a few quotations here, and we can kind of talk through them.
Sure, this is a wonderful page. Let's skip the very first one, and I think let's just go straight to the big quote that's sort of bolded right there. This is from the Illustrated London News. It says, "Because our expression is imperfect, we need friendship to fill up the imperfections." That's nice. But it's also deep, which is cool.
Much like Chesterton is. Nice and deep.
Nice and deep. A wonderful... Chesterton always had that amazing ability to express things that were sort of always on the tip of your brain. And that's one of the things I love about him. And this is just one of those quotes, because I think anyone who's ever delved into the arts, especially if you ever try to do anything expressive at all, you're sort of aware of your limitations. And friendship is kind of an art. And I think there's this feeling of like, you can't really say everything you want to say, but knowing that you're friends is sort of fills in those gaps.
Well, I think the other big point about it is, Chesterton is more or less saying, directly or indirectly, that you're not supposed to live your life alone, and that you really can't. Like human nature as it is, however you want to say it has come to the present state of being, it's necessary to have people. It's necessary for community. It's necessary to have fellowship. And he's not saying that you have to be the most extroverted person. He's just saying, hey, you're not perfect. You need people to help you along the way on your journey, and that comes in the form of friendship.
Yeah, I've heard somewhere too, you don't get to heaven alone. There's sort of this idea that you have to bring someone with you, or somebody brings you with them. For some of us, it's Chesterton who's kind of bringing us with him. Go ahead.
Oh no, I just was thinking when you said for some it's Chesterton, and it just made me think about the conference, and you have this gathering of several hundred people, and they're all there because of Chesterton, and I think you could say that they are all friends, like with Chesterton, and Chesterton's leading them and guiding them, and what a marvelous experience that was. To experience people gathered together as friends with Chesterton being the guide, and that no one would sort of say anything to the contrary. And they could all say at that moment, yeah, we're all filled up right now. All of our gaps are filled up with all these wonderful people that are around us.
And they're lasting friendships. I actually just got an email today from a gentleman who had asked me to communicate something to somebody else. He's like, "Oh, did you tell them? Because I'm going to email them, and I just want to make sure." And I had, but it was just a reminder that people are still in touch months and months after this conference, and potentially will stay in touch their whole lives, which is really really a wonderful thing to know.
Wasn't there a a couple that sort of met, like their relationship, which turned into marriage and family?
I think there's a few. Yeah, there's been a few Chesterton couples that I know of. Um, yeah, it's really just a place to meet your best friends and occasionally your soulmate.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that, well, their lives were imperfect. I don't know anything about their personal lives, but I think just the concept of a gap, a space,
Mm,
something that is not completed, something that isn't whole, and to say, yeah, it was filled with this other person. And yes, we can say, well, it's because they came together on a common bond of Chesterton, but to sort of, take it even a little bit more baseline, it just they filled up each other's lives, once they came together. And
mm,
now that part of their life, that, if you want to call it an imperfection, the lack of a spouse then was filled with this other person,
mm,
and now they're lifelong friends. I mean, if you look at
mm,
it, I mean, that's kind of what marriage is. It's a lifelong friendship. That's how I look at my wife. My wife and I are best friends, you know, so that space was filled with that friendship.
mm. Beautiful. Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You want to take the next one and we'll just keep on going down the page here?
All right. So this one comes from A Case of Comrades, the Apostle and the Wild Ducks. And Chesterton said, for friendship implies individuality, whereas comradeship really implies the temporary subordination, if not the temporary swamping of individuality. Friends are better for being two, but comrades are the better for being 2 million.
Written, I believe, at a time when communism was really on the rise, but still kind of true today about any kind of association. I think that is sort of an association of convenience instead of friendship, or of sort of, you can be bonded over things that aren't friendship, and maybe they're okay to be bonded over, but it's definitely a lesser thing, I believe.
Well, let's look at Chesterton himself, right? And let's look at his relationship with George Bernard Shaw. I would say they were very individual in their own ways, and they stuck very much to their individuality. But you would say that they had a friendship, not a comradeship.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something of the masses. It was something that kept each of them very unique in their own way. And while they had so many sort of contrasting views on different things, they really sort of enjoyed each other. And I don't think that they could have had that kind of friendship had it been what Chesterton is referring to as, being comrades.
Mm. And another astonishing thing about being a Chestertonian is you're not just, marching boot by boot next to your comrade towards a very big important goal. We're really just out to be friends and to help each other figure out the world according to eternal truth. But we're doing it in a friendly way. We're not really out to kind of goose step everybody into the same place. Yeah, but it's just a very astute way of saying that friendship is a very personal thing. I think that's part of it too. Is you can have 2 million comrades, but you can't be personally friends with 2 million people. It's just not possible. You could have 2 million followers on Facebook or Instagram or YouTube or whatever, but you can't be friends with all of those people. You can only have so many true and real friends that you can actually, again, fill those gaps with in your life.
I think also if you look at sort of Chesterton on a whole, right? I mean, you could not say that he was really a man that was writing on sort of one specific world ideology. I mean, he wrote about everything. You know, it was definitely. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you look at some of the political movements that exist in the world, and you referenced, the time of communism, it's very clear this is what communism is, and it's everything about being communist. Like, there's not sort of a variety within that. It's
Mm.
communist, and that's it. Chesterton was writing about culture. He was writing about friendship. He was writing about uh, political. He was
You
right.
might say he was universal.
Yeah, he was very. Yeah, that's great. Thank
Or
you.
Catholic, perhaps.
Perhaps at some point. Uh,
Uh,
but someone like that, you can't help but sort of see the very broadness of it, and you're going back to that quote again. If whereas comradeship really implies the temporary subordination, if not the temporary swamping of individuality. So whereas Chesterton very much is not swamping anyone's individuality, it would be very easy to say, to look at some of those other sort of world thoughts or world ideologies and say, yeah, there's no room for you being yourself at
mm,
all. And I think a
true.
real and genuine friendship allows you to be exactly who you are as a person, even if you don't agree. And again, that's my reference to Shaw. Didn't agree on many things, but they were each their individual people, but yet they were friends.
Yeah, and Chesterton has another quote about the saints that this reminds me of as well. He was saying something about the fact that the church being universal allows for all personality types within it. So you can be a saint and still be yourself. And I think true friendship is the same. You have to be able to allow the other to be themselves, um, and not try to just conform them to something else.
I'm glad you said that the Saints, because that's a great example of a lot of people who were definitely individuals. Like, it
Mm.
might be easy for someone who's maybe not a Christian or a believer in the existence of the saints to say, "Oh yeah, they're just a bunch of the same people. They all just believe that God person, and there's nothing unique about them," which is contrary to anything that we know about the saints, because you see so many different personalities within the saints. You see so many different ways of living. And yes, they're all bonded over their devotion to our Lord, but other than that, you really saw so much uniqueness in all of the saints. And some of them some of them did get to actually hang out together. We know
Hmm.
that historically, some of the saints, they taught each other, or they were in a same or a similar religious order. So some of them actually got to be friends with each other. But the saints is a really great example.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just, I mean, if you looked at them as a collection of historical figures, you would say, how are these people similar? But that's because the church allows for individuality. It's again, it's very Chestertonian idea that as long as you're within certain parameters, you can do whatever you want. As long as you are not eating the fruit of the tree, you can play in the entire garden. So the idea is that if you follow the few rules, and there really aren't that many, honestly, and you kind of accept the few and the true universal truths, you can basically do whatever you want from there.
It sounds like real freedom.
Yeah, real true freedom. All right, let's pull the next one. Okay. Only friendliness produces friendship, and we must look far deeper into the soul of man for the thing that produces friendliness. That's from Wells and the World State, from What I Saw in America, which is a great book. Cool. We must look far deeper into the soul of man for the thing that produces friendliness. I love that.
You could just be a grump in your life, and that's all. I'm just going to be grumpy. I'm going to be angry, and that's an easy road.
Mm.
But to focus on that smile, to focus on being friendly, it really does take sort of a deeper choice at times to say, I am going to offer my friendliness to, we'll say, the world, right? Especially right now, it'd be real
Mm.
easy to want to not be friendly to the world.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, it's always easier to be selfish, right? I mean, sadly, that's kind of our fallen nature. So uh, it's always easier to just be unconcerned about the other. And I think friendliness is a deep concern for the other person, because if you don't care about other people, unless you're, a psychopath and you're trying to be friends with people to use them, but we're going to exclude that
Yeah, we'll
exception.
we'll we'll not talk about
We'll
that
talk
one.
about real true friendliness. But if you're concerned about someone enough to want them to feel comfortable, then you're going to be friendly with them. If you're trying to help them feel included, if you're trying to help them feel like they are valuable and worthwhile, then you're going to be friendly to them. But that all takes you thinking about the other person. Um, it's a very outward facing, in the best possible way. It's a very outward facing kind of emotion. And I think it does occasionally, like you said, it takes some self sacrifice and some self discipline to really be able to stand up and say, well, I'm going to be friendly today, even though I don't feel like it. And sometimes, you fake it till you make it, and then suddenly you wake up one day and you are a little more friendly than you were before.
I think it comes with a great reward as well. That word that you said, it can take a lot of self-sacrifice. You could choose to not sacrifice and say, I'm not going to be friendly. I can't do this, and potentially end your day with some guilt or some regret. And the other side is, okay, I'm going to sacrifice. I'm going to be friendly. I'm going to be personable. I'm going to reach out. You went to some event and you say, I'm going to reach out. I'm going to talk to people. And maybe you don't become friends. Maybe you don't develop a friendship. But at the end of the day, when you sit down and you exhale, you're like, okay, that was a lot, but at least I can say I was friendly. I tried to do my best, and I wasn't rude. I wasn't mean. I wasn't cold. I wasn't distant. And you can definitely rest easier
Mm.
knowing that you tried to be friendly versus the other option.
It actually makes me think of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, the scene that's often cut out of movies and plays, and I think is an extraordinarily wonderful scene. Um, so go read the book. It's quite short, but it's the scene at the end of the first. It's called, I think, the first stanza. It's written in like long chapters, sort of. Um, and Ebenezer Scrooge has just talked to Jacob Marley, the ghost, and he's telling him, this is where you're going to end up with these chains, basically purgatory or possibly hell. Um, and then he takes Scrooge over to the window, and they both look out the window together, and out the window are all these kind of specters and ghosts. And to a ghost, every one of them is standing near someone that they wish they could help. So for Dickens, purgatory or hell was this horrible feeling of having to watch suffering and not be able to help. So there's one standing near a woman whose baby is crying because they're hungry or cold or whatever, and you just have to stand there and you can't help because you missed your opportunity in life. So it's just friendliness is kind of a chance to sort of open your eyes and don't not miss those opportunities, because once they're gone, and you never know how you could have helped that person.
I I feel like a lot of people probably exit their lives, unfortunately, having that sort of regret. I'm glad that Dickens sort of put it into perspective, but I think it's not just fiction. I think that's a reality. A lot of people on their deathbed will say, look back and say, I could have done this, I could have done that. Whether it was family, whether it was someone that was their friend, whether it's someone that they just passed on the road, they look back and they wish that they had done more. They wish that they had made that sacrifice, and they're gonna, whatever happens after their death, that's between them and the Lord. But at that moment, that regret fills them up, and we can we can avoid that. We can avoid that by digging in for that deep friendship, that deep friendliness, and try really hard in our day-to-day lives. And it won't be perfect. It won't be. But if we're making the effort, I think we can die with much less regret.
And just to give one last, because this just came into my mind, and I think it's a great illustration that actually happened to me. When I was in college, I went to England for a semester, and I took the tube everywhere. It was great most of the time. But one time it was kind of evening, and I had to change trains at a rather deserted station, and it was me on the platform and a man in a hoodie who was kind of muttering to himself. And then there was a woman with a baby in a stroller on the other side of the platform. And the man started to kind of come toward me, and he started to say things, and he was very menacing. And I was a young woman alone at night. It was scary. This woman with her baby, who I had never met, never seen, I'd never been to this part of London before. She just strolled her baby on over and sat next to me on the bench and started talking to me like we were old friends. Uh, and the gentleman walked away, and he turned right around and walked away. And I don't really know, but she might have saved my life that day. So it's sort of a dramatic example, but this actually happened. This little act of friendliness, and I don't know her name. I didn't keep in touch with her. I have no idea who she was. She just gave me this moment of friendliness that really, if at the very least, saved me from a strange and awkward situation. So I don't know. Go out on a limb. Be friendly with somebody today.
Look for those people on the train station platforms that
who
need a
need your
friend.
help.
Right.
They need you. They need your help.
All right. So next on the list, it's a little bit longer one, but Chesterton says, and this comes from The New Hypocrite: What's Wrong with the World? Another good collection of essays from Chesterton. It is not merely true that a creed unites men. Nay, a difference of creed unites men, so long as it is a clear difference. A boundary unites. Many a magnanimous Muslim and chivalrous crusader must have been nearer to each other, because they were both dogmatists, than any two agnostics. I say God is one, and I say God is one, but also three. That is the beginning of a good, quarrelsome, manly friendship.
Well done.
Thank you.
That was a long one.
That was a long one.
But you were talking about Chesterton and Shaw. Here you go, right?
Right.
Beautiful illustration of their friendship. Because Shaw, although I think he professed to be an atheist. So he did have quite strict sort of dogmas. God does not exist. God exists, and so we can be friends. Um, and it's funny because if you can find someone who will admit to something like that, which is actually very hard today, I think it's much easier to get into deep conversations with them than with someone who's like, oh, I'll believe in anything. I'm not really sure. Could be, couldn't be. You can't talk to those people.
Well, it comes down to really to not also the fact that you can have a friendship, but just comes down to simple respect. Can you respect a person? If you can't, okay, then you should probably not say anything, okay? But if you can respect the person for the fact that they're a human being, which gives them automatically a certain amount of dignity, then you can move forward to the next stage and discuss the things that are so different between the two of you. I had a relative who we were both on two different ends of the spectrum when it came to certain views. My relative was very progressive, very, very staunchly progressive in a lot of things that I am very much on the other side of. So I wouldn't say that we had some blossoming, amazing relationship, but we respected each other and we could actually talk. We were able to
Mm,
talk very clearly. We never treated each other harshly because it would have been very easy to. It would have been easy to throw out names, to be very negative and just sever it all. But we were
mm,
actually able to talk. Whereas I had a friend that I went to middle school with found me on a social media platform, and then it was time of the year where this is years ago, and it was some pro-life statement, and I was on board, and she just, oh, you're one of those people, and like just cut it off. She didn't want. There
uh,
was no room for conversation. It was just, nope,
mm,
I can't associate with you, and that's her choice, but I think there was plenty of room to still have a friendship or to have
mhm,
at least a respectful relationship of let's at least communicate. You believe this, I believe that. We can talk about that, you know, or we can exist without that being something that we talk about. Like, you're going to have your views. I don't agree with them. I'm going to have my views. You don't agree with them. Um, but I mean, I think that, you know, Chesterton is very good to say that, you know, a a difference of creed unites men. And I don't want to advocate say like we have to all believe something different, but at least it's interesting, like if we were all exactly the same, if every single one of us was the same person from belief to actions to likes, interests, it would be a boring world.
mhm.
So that difference gives us something that, makes the world not boring.
Mm, true, true. And I think there's something in this quote too that's saying that like the ability to admit difference is sort of an indication of an ability to go deeper with a person. Um, because if there are people in your life that you can't talk about things with, that's kind of like it's kind of sad. You can sort of be friendly with those people, but if they're really important things and you just know you can't go there, you're sort of never going to reach a deeper level, which is really sad. And I think it's a special gift that Chesterton had that he could reach that deeper level with people that he disagreed with, which I think is harder. So Albert and I are friends, and a lot of our friendship I think is based on our beliefs that we share. We also just like hanging out, but like we're both Catholic. We both are pretty conservative. We have some ideas and thoughts and beliefs in common that help us to cement that bond. But there's sort of like a special charism of the ability to truly seek deep friendship with someone that you disagree with on those fundamental deep things. And it has to come from both sides. You have to have two people who are both willing and able to go there. Like you said, if your friend chose not to go there with you, there's nothing you can do. But if she had, it would have perhaps been a wonderful and amazing thing. And it's really a shame when people choose to not engage. I think it shows a fear of a position being attacked. So I think people often conflate their ideas with themselves, and they think if you're going to say something about their ideas that they don't agree with, you're actually attacking them, which simply isn't true. Um, yeah, so it's just a kind of a rare and beautiful gift to be able to talk about ideas, and at the end of the day still be friends with the person. Let's kind of sort of continue that idea. The last quote on the page here from the Illustrated London News. These are the things which might conceivably and truly make men forgive their enemies. We can only turn hate to love by understanding what are the things that men have loved. Nor is it necessary to ask men to hate their loves in order to love one another. Just as two grocers are most likely to be reconciled when they remember for a moment that they are two fathers, So, two nationals are most likely to be reconciled when they remember, if only for a moment, that they are two patriots. That was written in 1921, which we should remember was right at the end of World War One. Very, very interesting impression thing to say. But the idea that you don't have to ask someone to sort of relinquish who they are. I think we keep coming back to this theme, but you don't have to ask someone to relinquish who they are in order to befriend them.
This makes me think of, there's a story, and I thought of it when you said this is at the end of World War One. There's a story, and I'm just going to really paraphrase it very lightly, but it was two opposing forces, and it could have been British and German, or French and German, or a collection, and I forget which it is, but it's out there, and I know this is fairly accurate in all of my inaccuracy, if that makes sense. But it was Christmas, and there was two opposings. They were kind of each in their opposing trenches, and they basically said, "Hey, let's stop fighting and let's celebrate Christmas." And they did. Like, everyone stopped being everyone's enemies for a day, or potentially a few days, to celebrate Christmas. And they, much like the two grocers, realize that they're fathers, or what does he say? He says that the two nationals remember that they are two patriots. That's really the really good one here. Like, you have opposing forces fighting for their countries, and in the thick of it all, stop and say, well, we all like Christmas,
Mm,
so let's stop and let's celebrate.
mm.
And for that moment, in that brief moment, they were friends.
And I do know that they actually crossed no man's land. There was small gifts exchanged of chocolate and whatnot. Not a lot of communication because they mostly didn't speak each other's languages. But I had even heard that at some points they were like soccer matches happening, to the point where actually the higher ups got so appalled that they might not want to fight that they forbade them from fraternizing at all, which is really very, very sad. But yeah, I've always thought it would be an interesting kind of what if to know what would have happened had that Christmas truce kind of gone on and on and on. Perhaps there would have been a lot less fighting there. It's one of those grueling World War One battles.
World War One, World War Two, a lot of the great wars, unfortunately, just very tragic, very just dark times in our history. But it's nice to see the glimpse of humanity that exists within them.
Mm,
So you cannot say with absolute certainty that the wars were just a complete devastation without any sense of humanity. There was this moment where forces said, I don't want to fight right now.
mm,
And we can do that on our own levels. We can do that. We can say, you know what? I am who I am. You are who you are. But together we are this one thing. And for that, I respect you. I love you as a human being. And at least we can hold that. And that might be the only thing. That might be it. The one iota of that small thing, but at least you took the time to recognize it instead of just saying, this is just a loss. This is
mm,
just a complete loss of a person. This is a complete loss of grouping of people. And those, there's something that binds us.
mm,
And I appreciate that in the example from World War One, it was Christmas, you know,
mm.
come together and bound over the celebration of our Savior's birth.
Yeah. And if you look at the things that are under attack these days, it's a lot of those things that could bind people together. It's the family, it's the faith, it's human dignity. These are the things I think we need to fight for, because they are sort of our common ground. They're where we can come together and start that dialogue and try to initiate some friendliness that perhaps would lead to something more someday.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to Uncommon Sense, where we have been talking about friendship. And I want to remind everyone that if you want to look at some of these quotes, and this is only a small gathering, I am most certain that Chesterton said much more on relationships and friendship if you so wish to find them. But if you want to look back at the quotes that we are talking about, that can be found at chesterton.org/quotations/friendship. And I will put that link in the description. And we want to also remind you that, as you know, as what Grettelyn said is uncommoners. If you want to give yourself a title, the people who listen to the Uncommon Sense podcast. So, as faithful uncommoners, we would love to get any feedback. If you go to your favorite podcast platform, give us a rating, give us a review. We would love that. It helps us in getting pushed up the marker so that more people can find this podcast. So please feel free to do that. We would be very grateful. Grettelyn, thank you for being my friend and for talking about friendship. I'm much appreciative.
Thank you, Albert. It's great to be your friend.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am so glad you have joined us. I hope that you will continue to join us here on Uncommon Sense, the official podcast of the Society of G.K. Chesterton. And I encourage all of you to find the ways to strengthen and grow your own friendships. And remember, Chesterton is always better with friends. Talk to you next time.